Hey, it's Brent with Lykins Motorsports again, and thought I'd take some time and get maybe a little bit ahead of schedule on this 445. The last thing that we did with this was to have Smith Brothers make some custom push rods for us. And the push rods, you may be able to see it with your eye, but it's 3/8 on one end, 5/16 on the other end. Our rocker arm geometry made it so that a 3/8 push rod got a little too close to the rocker arm body. So I had them make this heavy wall push rod for us for mock-up. And once I found that the length was right and the clearance was good, I went ahead and had them make another 15. They've been so busy that instead of usually getting things out in a week or so, it's been almost a month. So I did receive notification that push rods had been shipped. I should have those on Tuesday. In preparation for all that, I went ahead, and it took me forever, but I used one push rod and checked push rod to intake manifold clearance on every hole, which basically with the intake on, it's boils down to putting the push rod in, putting all the rocker arms on, setting the lash, rolling the engine over, checking for clearance, pulling the rocker arms off, putting the push rod into the next hole, put the rocker arms on, bolt them down, check for lash. So 16 times. And it's a lengthy process, but I wanted to get ahead of schedule. I know Mr. Clint is eager to get this engine dynoed and at his house, so we're going to try to do that. I did have to make 3 corrections to the pushrod tubes in the intake manifold. They were rubbing at the bottom. Sometimes that happens, but die grinder takes care of it pretty quickly. I'm going to go through now and check it again after I've made corrections. If it's good, and you've seen that in the past video, that when we prime the oil pump, those lifters feel good. When we prime the oil pump, we're getting oil to all 16 lifters. So if the clearance is good, I'm going to go ahead and get the gaskets glued on. I'm going to get the intake bolted on. We'll get the water pump and everything on, and be ready for when the push rods come in next week. So we've got our rocker arms bolted back on. Our intake is bolted back on. And I've got a piece of paper down in the pushrod tube around the pushrod. So we're going to check it here. And we're also going to check at full lift. So the valve is starting to open. Still moving. Still moving. Good. That's full open. And we've got plenty of clearance. As long as it's not rubbing or binding, let me say. As long as it's not binding, we're in good shape. It's not bad for a push rod to touch. Push rods deflect anyway. So, in a guide plate, rocker arm stud situation, the push rod relies on the guide plate for support. Kind of the same thing here. On an FE, you don't have guide plates, but you have pushrod tubes. And it is not a sin if, I got that so far down in there I can't get it out. It's not a sin if the pushrod decides to lean on the intake manifold for a little bit of support. Come on, baby. All right, we're experiencing technical difficulties. Okay, so this was our first issue. Here's the second one. Valve is shut right now. We've got plenty of clearance. I'll roll this baby over until the valve starts to open. We'll check. Good. That's full open. Good. It's hard to open that valve, but it sure likes to shut. And we're good on that one. So just one quick note on if you do this at home, these heads have been ported. This intake flows a little over 380 CFM, so it's a pretty high performance piece. The area that I'm grinding on, look at how close in proximity we are to this runner. So you don't want to just get in there with your die grinder and just start wallering it out. You just got to kind of go slow. You can kind of stick a finger in here and stick a finger in the port opening, and kind of you can feel how far your fingers are apart. But there have been many people who have ground through too far, and they get into the port, and then you're having to sleeve this hole, and then you get into a big mess. So just take it easy and take your time. So we're in good shape on this one. The last one is this one, which is interesting because it's directly across from this one over here. So kind of symmetrical deal. And I'll get our push rod swapped over to the other side and check that hole. Okay, I actually had to pull the intake back off and redo this one. Just didn't have enough clearance. So there's at rest, valve shut, crank her over. So we have clearance. We have clearance. All right, so we'll pull the intake off for the 88th time and glue our intake gaskets down. I'm using Mr. Gasket 202As. It's my standard go-to. I just like a regular paper gasket. And we'll get those glued down, and then I'm going to change the silicone tube out in my caulking gun, and we'll get this intake mounted. Remember, you always do your checklist before a part goes on. So this checklist is to make sure that all your bolts are the right length. You don't want to get to a point where your silicone is drying and you don't have a good clamp load on it. Also check, make sure your distributor fits and you got a good even gap, like we do here. And I actually use this to put the intake back on at the exact point every time. I also make some marks to do that, but we're in good shape. So we're going to get this intake manifold on. There, gaskets are placed. Be careful on these. They're kind of counterintuitive. The lettering is on the other side, so when you put them on with the lettering up, the bolt holes don't line up. So they're glued to the head, so I'm going to go back and put just another thin layer on the gaskets, run my beads, and drop that intake on. The intake manifold is bolted on. We're going to get some duct tape now on our carb flange, put our carb studs in, get our lift plate on, and then we can move on to getting the water neck on the water pump, getting the distributor in, that sort of thing. So we're not too far away. When the push rods get here, it'll just be probably about an hour's worth of work to get the rocker arms on and the lash set and prime the oil pump and that sort of thing. And here we are. Got quite a bit done today. Got distributors recurved, water pump, water neck are on. The rocker arms are in there temporarily until the push rods show up. These are the valve covers that Clint requested. We'll probably have to double up the gaskets, but that's not a big deal. I do that quite often to clear big rocker arms. And here's where we are. This thing's gonna be a little beast. All right, guys, I'm gonna hang it up for today. Gonna rest a little bit before head down south tomorrow. Hope you guys are having a good weekend. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't. Hit that like button. Let me know that the content is good. And I will see you guys next week.